And staying in Israel as the conflict marks 100 days today, families of hostages in Gaza held a 24-hour rally in Tel Aviv, calling on the Israeli government to bring their loved ones home. And while some families have had proof of life, others still don't know anything about their loved ones' fate. More than 100 hostages were released during a temporary truce in November, but 132 remain in Gaza, including the remains of about 24 who died or were killed. Israel kept up bombardments in the Gaza Strip yesterday, vowing to press ahead with its offensive to destroy Hamas. And since the October 7th attack on Israel, which triggered the war, almost 24,000 Palestinians have been killed. Professor Saths Cooper, psychologist and president of the Pan-African Psychology Union, joins me now. Prof, welcome. Look, you wrote a very moving op-ed about South Africa taking Israel to the World Court. In your op-ed, you highlighted its ramifications in geopolitics. Briefly take us through these, Prof.
Well, look, let's be very frank. The welcome that our team got is reminiscent of some of our sports stars returning, like the rugby world champions in October and a few others. It's given South Africa a major boost, and our moral authority, I think, is being regained by bucking tradition, bucking conventional wisdom, and attempting to find, as we enter the 30th anniversary of our democracy, another genocide being perpetrated. You will recall, your viewers will also know, that the world stood by when the Rwanda crisis happened and genocide was committed. And now we have that opportunity. We weren't really part of all these conventions at that time, but now that we are, we have taken the right step, because this, you see, the narrative that's being played out, unfortunately, is that South Africa is against Jewish people. It's interesting that many Jewish people elsewhere in the world and within Israel itself have done the same and called for, not in our name, these atrocities need to stop. And the constant bombardment in Gaza, where so many hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. Well, actually, the numbers tell us it's close to 2 million have been displaced. And the destruction, you know, the woman, KC, pointed out very clearly that online right now we are seeing the victims post and the aggressors and bystanders post. If these scenes of children being blown to bits don't move hearts, nothing will. Unfortunately,
Professor,
you're correct in your... Yeah.
Yes, Prof. Look, South Africa has received global praise for it, as you've just alluded to, but others are asking, where was South Africa's moral compass in Russia's war with Ukraine, or even closer to home, like the current conflict in Sudan, for example?
Sure. Look, I think that all those are important. I think that we should not forget that South Africa condemned what was going on in the Ukraine and asked for a resolution, a peaceful resolution of that. We did the same when the horrific events of 7th of October happened. We called on all sides to cease and desist.
And you say that...
number of...
Yes, Prof, go ahead.
The number of people killed in the Ukraine don't equate to the number of people killed in Gaza in a concentrated period of time from the few days after the 7th of October. The statements from those very, and we need to distinguish between Jewish people and Zionism. And here we have a clear case of genocide happening, and we know it's happening. But the prevailing narrative seems to be protect those who we are friends with. And South Africa breaking that narrative is very significant. Now, we also know that geopolitically, South Africa will pay, whatever the outcome, whether the outcome goes against us and the court is loaded because you have a president who is a U.S. State Department deployee. There are many in that court who have repeat terms, and many of them will look to remaining in that court, and every 3 years there's a rotation. Some people lose their positions. The Russian vice president of the court lost his position in November, and this is the last month he will serve. So those consequences we're aware of, South Africa is aware of. There will be people who will threaten to leave this country in terms of investments, etc. We're aware of it. But our moral authority comes from our struggle against, after Nazism and the Holocaust against Jews in Germany, Austria, and other places, the crime against humanity was apartheid. As victims of that, we cannot stand by and allow a similar situation happening in this manner. And we have a moral authority. We have the right to take any country to court. Raising, if tomorrow, Alicia, somebody, God forbid, murders somebody close to you, and I use that as an excuse to murder somebody else, there is no logic in that.
Absolutely.
Murder is wrong.
All right,
so
Prof.
when you start killing people in that fashion, they need to account for it. And no amount of emotion is going to take away the fact that this is a calculated genocidal attempt to extinguish Palestinians from the map in the Middle East.
All right. And to close this discussion, Prof, you say that a negative outcome at the ICJ will likely accelerate the need for outdated and incapacitated United Nations to be reformed. Please briefly elaborate because we're out of time, Prof.
Let's be very clear that the United Nations was a successor to the League of Nations, which collapsed when the Nazis, the so-called Second World War happened. The victors then, the US, the UK, China, Taiwan actually, France, and Russia, assumed veto power in the Security Council. So 5 nations, replaced in the early 70s by mainland China, cannot control what 193 countries, all of them together, comprise. It's time that situation that happened in 1945 does not perpetuate itself, because what we're seeing in a terrible way is one country vetoing another to play their own games, and the 183 other countries stand by totally toothless and unable to do anything. Kofi Annan did start a review process of the United Nations. That needs to be completed now, and I trust the current Secretary General will have the guts to go through with that, because he also has tried to raise what is happening in Gaza. He's made straight statements, and he's been attacked as anti-Jewish. So if he can be attacked as anti-Jewish, then who else can we rely on?
Thank you so much, Prof, for that. That is Professor Saths Cooper, Pan-African Psychology Union, there giving us a different outlook and insight into the case at the International Court of Justice.